بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحابته أجمعين اللهم إني نويت التعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على تمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم والدعاء إلى الهدى والدلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم يا الله اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ومولانا محمد صلى الله عليه. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. So what we've been seeing in this chapter is the Imam speaking about the type of murshid, the type of teacher that we must be searching for, but also that there is a reciprocal relationship between a student and a teacher. It's not just something which is one way. The type of teacher that the Imam has been speaking about clearly has something really deep to give, because if you look at the description that the Imam's been mentioning, this type of teacher is someone who their understanding is anchored in the light of the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ and the teachings of the Quran. And they have an understanding which has been gifted to them now. Because if you just look at the description that the Imam mentioned on this page and the page previous to this, we'll see that these sorts of people are not that common to find. So if we were to find them, we can see that this type of person is a deep ocean and has many secrets about existence and the fact that we're here. And so recognizing that, because that's what you believe now, don't you? You've seen this person having all these beautiful traits. You want to now spend time with this person. You recognize they have something deep to give, and now we want to understand, how do we unlock this person? That's the key. Because it's not just a case that you just knock on their door and say, look, I'm here, can you tell me the secrets of existence, please? The key, or one of the keys, one of the major keys, if you like, is adab. In other words, knowing how to comport ourselves with our teachers. It's not just about respect, it's not just about honor, it's about doing things in a certain way, right? Because you could outwardly honor someone, you could outwardly respect someone, but as the Imam's going to tell us in a moment, outward veneration and outward respect doesn't really amount to anything if that's not what we feel inside. If we're truly not venerating them in our hearts, then what are we really doing? And adab, as I mentioned, we've said before, is in Arabic, a writer is referred to as an adib, because the idea being that this is the person who has comportment with words. And what it really means is that this person knows where to place and how to place words in their proper places. Because when we read someone who writes very, very well, we recognize that the power of their words is a lot more because they know how to write properly and write powerfully. And so that person's referred to as an adib. In other words, they are showing adab with words by placing the words in the correct order, in the correct places for maximum effect. And likewise then is adab. Ma'duba in Arabic is a feast. But it's interesting that ma'duba has a relation to adab, because the idea being is that when you're sitting around the table with a feast, there's so many varieties of great food that you may be overcome to just reach out and forget your manners. So the reason why it's referred to as a ma'duba is that's exactly where you should know how to comport yourself in front of all of these tasty dishes that that are put in front of you. And likewise, then is a case, in fact, even more so with the great teacher, is that we must know how to comport with a great teacher. Now, in our tradition, many a time, the best course of action is silence, because many doors open through silence. And incessant questioning or unnecessary questioning isn't really going to open something for you. If you recall the classes that we've been having recently on Saturdays, there's a way to go about asking questions. A question ordinarily, it's probably not the right one if it's the first thing that comes to your mind and you're asking it. And so through silence and patience and through long company, you'll see many great things unfolding from the Shaykh in front of your eyes. The Shaykh could, for instance, speak about things that you've been thinking about, and you can think, how's that possible? I haven't even said anything. But Allah will illuminate this individual's heart to speak about things, and they happen to relate to you directly. Right? Or when you're with a great Shaykh, you'll see that the world seems to function all that little bit differently. It works a bit more calmly. That's always a good sign. And so what we're doing really is we're learning a lot more from a great teacher's actions than we are necessarily even from their words. Because actions are the internalization of words, internalization of teachings. And once you internalize, they come out in the form of actions. And that's why you remember what Imam Ghazālī said in the Ihya about the great Salihin, the great awliya, that it's about looking at them and their states of being. He didn't say, and listen to what they have to say necessarily. It's about just observing them and being in their company, right? Because when you see this being said, that when you see a pious person praying, you feel, that prayer is a little bit different from mine, right? Or when you see a pious person performing wudu, you see, okay, that's probably a little bit different from how I do it. Or when you see a pious person reading Quran, or any act of worship, and you think, yeah, indeed. When you see a pious person speaking to other people, their words are always chosen, their words are always kind and soft and polite, encouraging. When you see a person of Allah, you'll see that when people are in their company, they don't want to speak about other people, right? And in fact, not just that, but they'll actively encourage others, in fact, tell others to refrain from that too. Right. I think once I remember Shaykh Hamza Yusuf was saying about his time with Murabit al-Hajj, and Murabit was teaching a text to a young man, and there was a part in the text which trying to explain a type of a donkey, and the student said, "Oh, do you mean this type of donkey, i.e. so-and-so's donkey?" And Murabit, according to what we hear, said, "Look, don't backbite." I left people, because he lived in the deserts. I left people, Allah yarhamu, I left people because they backbite. And so if you want to be in my company, don't backbite. And he was just speaking about someone's possession, because of course, as you know, to speak ill of someone's possessions comes under the general category of backbiting, right? So this is what the Imam says on page 36 then. In terms of the comportment that we must have towards our teachers. And he says in the Arabic on page 37, أما احترام الظاهر فهو ألا يجادله ولا يشتغل بالاحتجاج معه في كل مسألة. That as for outward veneration for your teachers, it is that you should not contend with him nor engage in argument with him over anything. You'll see sometimes people incessantly asking questions. Yeah, but. That's not an adab of having companionship. And what it will do is that you'll basically block the teacher off from you, because a teacher will not want to give and share something in your presence, and that's not a good state to be in, right? Because again, as I've said before, imparting knowledge is a responsibility, and it must be given to those people who you think are fit to carry it. Because in our tradition, knowledge being imparted isn't only anchored in your cognitive ability or your intelligence, as I've mentioned before. Knowledge is something which must be given, yes, to everyone, but when we're speaking about more technical knowledge, it should be given to people who have a certain way about them in terms of their good character, such that we know that they're going to deploy this knowledge in useful ways and in meaningful ways. And so he says, don't engage in incessant questioning, even if you are aware of an error in something the Shaykh may have said, because again, they can make mistakes. وَإِنْ عَلِمَ خَطَأَهُ عَفْوًا وَلَا يُلْقِيَ بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ سَجَّادَتَهُ إِلَّا وَقْتَ أَدَاءِ الصَّلَاةِ, and that he should not lay his prayer carpet down in front of him unless at the time of carrying out the formal prayer. Again, it's just adab, isn't it? That look, don't walk ahead of him. Don't lay your prayer mat down before his. You should want to lay his or let his be put down before yours. فَإِذَا فَرَغَ يَرْفَعَهَا, and when he finishes, i.e. the Shaykh, the prayer, you should rush to want to remove. Now what you will see from, again, great teachers as well, is that they tend not to want to have this done for them. I mean, they'll resist that. But sometimes some mashayikh don't do that. They'll let you, not because they want to, but because it's good tarbiyah for you. And so sometimes the mashayikh will let something go. Let me see if they do this. Let me see if they do this, right? And if they can see that from their students, it's a good sign that this person is on the right course. Now, again, doesn't mean you won't, inshallah, come across true mashayikh who are unnecessarily or inappropriately, just commanding their students around, and you go and make the tea now, and you go and do this now, you go and do that now. It's not really like that. They have such a veneration in people's hearts that people will do things even though they insist that, look, don't do this, right? وَلَا يُكْثِرَ نَوَافِلَ الصَّلَاةِ بِحَضْرَتِهِ. Look at this. And that you should not increase the number of optional prayers in his presence. In other words, don't try to make your Shaykh think that you're somehow, your piety is extending to these levels, that you're praying all of these different, raka'ah in front of him. No, that's not what you want to, because you're trying to compete with others then to get the attention of your Shaykh. The attention of the Shaykh is essentially something that is anchored in your silence and your comportment, not in necessarily the things that you're trying to show him that you're doing. وَيَعْمَلَ مَا يَأْمُرُهُ الشَّيْخُ مِنْ الْعَمَلِ بِقَدْرِ وُسْعِهِ وَطَاقَتِهِ. And he should do whatever task is commanded to him by his teacher as far as he can manage and is capable. وَأَمَّا إِحْتِرَامُ الْبَاطِنِ. As for inward veneration, فهو أن كل ما يسمع ويقبل منه في الظاهر لا ينكره في الباطن. It's that everything he hears and receives from him externally should not be rejected by him internally. So in other words, sometimes we listen to our teachers, we outwardly just nod our head, but we think, yeah, I'm not too sure what he means by that. I'm not too sure if I agree with that. I'm not too sure if that's what I want to do. I'm not too sure. Right? The Imām doesn't like that. He said, why are you sitting with that person then? There's a breakdown in our understanding of this relationship then. Again, just to make clear, go back to what we discussed on Saturdays. You're sitting with someone from the same paradigm, from the same framework. You're trying to look at it this way. When we read a technical book, is it not the case that a technical book stands at a level above us and we have to make that intellectual effort to get to the level of what the book is trying to tell us? Because it's conceptual, isn't it? You have to treat the Shaykh like that. That there's things I'm learning from the Shaykh that I don't really understand right now. But again, keep in mind, you're going to take that position once you've looked into your Shaykh. Not that you just open the door, the first person who comes to, yeah, that looks like a good Shaykh. Or the person who's very famous in the public sphere. That's not necessarily the one you should take. You want to look well into who your Shaykh is. And once you're convinced that that person is as close to the description that Imam Ghazālī has mentioned in this book, it makes sense then, doesn't it, to know, okay, yeah, I deeply believe this person knows and I don't, and that this person is going to going to take me on this path that I want to get to, right? Or travel upon, I should say. Now, so you shouldn't reject anything that he says internally. لا فعلا ولا قولا, neither his statements nor his acts. لئلا يتسم بالنفاق, lest he be characterized by hypocrisy. In other words, you're giving lip service to the Shaykh, but inwardly you think, no, I don't really agree with him. I don't really think that's the right position to take. So why are you here then? Right. وإن لم يستطع يترك صحبته إلى أن يوافق باطنه ظاهرة. And if he is unable, i.e. that his outward and his inward don't agree, then what he should do is that he should take the leave the company of his Shaykh until his interior is consistent with his exterior. In other words, you need to go away and understand, okay, if this person fulfills the criteria that I've been told, then there's something wrong with me. What am I lacking in my understanding that's going to bring me to the place that I can engage in this relationship with my Shaykh? Naam. وَيَحْتَرِزُ عَنْ Naam. And then he says, Afwan. وَيَحْتَرِزُ عَنْ مُجَالَسَةِ صَاحِبِ السُّوءِ لِيَقْصُرَ وِلَايَةَ الشَّيَاطِينِ الْجِنِّ وَالْإِنسِ عَنْ صَحْنِ قَلْبِهِ. That he should be on his guard against socializing with the wicked. Now, what's really interesting here is the word mujalasa is even less than socializing. Don't even spend any time with someone of evil habits or bad habits, right? Let alone spend time with someone who is a reprobate or truly wicked and someone who's immoral, right? Why? So as to check the power of the shayateen among the jinn and the men, right? Because this is the place that the shaitan is sowing his discord, and that's exactly where we don't want to be. فَيُصَفَّ مِنْ لَوْثِ الشَّيْطَانَةِ And so why should he do this? So as to check the power of the demons among the jinn and the men in the recess of his heart, and to be rid of the taint of villainy. وَعَلَى كُلِّ حَالٍ يَخْتَارُ الْفَقْرَ عَلَى الْغِنَى. And at any rate, he should choose poverty over wealth. In other words, don't think that just by that sometimes we may need to engage in some kind of social gatherings, but those social gatherings are not worth our religious time, because we may think there may be some worldly benefit in there for us. The Imam saying, throw that on its head. You don't need that. You'd rather prefer to have less than to have more, if it means you being in gatherings that you shouldn't be in, or perhaps working in places that you shouldn't be working, or any other such thing. It should always be restricted to what's good. And it should never be a consideration that just because we want to earn more money, we should do something which compromises who we are. No? And of course, this is huge that we can speak on. Now look at what the Imam says here. He says, he's going to tell us now what is a Sufi. So if anyone ever asks us, what's a Sufi? He said, this is it. He said, ثُمَّ أَعْلَمْ أَوَّلْ يُعْلَمْ أَنَّ التَّصَوُّفْ لَهُ خَصْلَتَانِ. That tasawwuf has two main characteristics. الاستقامة مع الله تعالى والسكون عن الخلق. It's to be steadfast, I have istiqama, and to be good to others, or as he translates it, to be withdrawn from mankind. You know, you're not really relying on them, you're not really wanting to be part of their company. Now, istiqama is what we would in English very loosely say to be steadfast. In other words, it's to be dutiful and unwavering in our belief. Now, nothing should shake us from our practice or our belief. That's what it means to be steadfast. No matter what happens, what comes my way, what life throws at me, I'm never giving up my prayer. I'm never giving up my fast. I'm never giving up my principles. My belief is my belief. It does not matter what anyone says. Because look at the statements of the Siddiq. You know, when they informed him about the Isra and Mi'raj, his statement was, in qalahu, if he says it, I believe him. Right now, how does it relate to us here? That everything that we know to have come down to us from the Prophet ﷺ and from Allah Azza wa Jal, we believe. End of story. That's it. And is to be firm on that, unwavering, unstinting, never, becoming a little bit hesitant. No matter what the world may throw up, questions, concerns, doubts, new evidence supposedly, no. Right? And Imam Ghazālī is so keen to really press this point home all the time, to have istiqamah. And that's why they say that we all speak about miracles, but it's very well known amongst the awliya that the greatest miracle that any person can be given, akbarul karama, any miracle, is al-istiqamah, is to be steadfast. If you have seen someone praying 5 times a day for the last 40 years, maybe even praying in a masjid, and you see them having fasted through the summer months and the winter months, and you see that they are someone of uprightness and goodness and truth, you know that that person has been given one of the greatest miracles that there is. Because what more greater thing can there be than being someone who's unwavering in their practice? It doesn't matter what comes. They're in the masjid, whether it's snowing, whether it's raining, whether it's sun's out, whether it's blustery or windy, the leaves are falling, whether it's spring, it makes no difference to them. Because for them, life is about standing in front of Allah. And all the seasons of life that may actually come our way have no bearing on what we do. We will keep going, that's it. If it's cold at night, that's the time that they love to get up at night. When the days are long, that's the time that they love to fast. Because that's for them to show now, I'm standing up to be counted now. This is a time where we don't want to do. Our action seems to, that's part of istiqamah, isn't it? That if you always wake up 25 or 30 minutes or 45 minutes, now whatever you wake up before Fajr, right? But when it gets cold, we start delaying it, whatever it may be. That's something about our istiqamah then, isn't it? And that's why to be consistent in our practice is a wonder. It's one of the greatest things that you can see. And if you ever find someone like that, know that you've kind of found a shaykh. Even though that person may not see themselves as that, but all you have to do is just try to spend, if they go to the masjid, just walk with them to the masjid, walk back which way they're going. They may not even say anything to you, but you'll see that maybe some of the barakat that they have may come to us as well. And so that's what the Imam is saying, that tasawwuf has these 2 characteristics, istiqamah and to be withdrawn from mankind. And whoever is correct towards Allah, in other words, whoever has istiqamah, and whoever masters their character, when dealing with people, and such that you deal with them mildly, that person is a Sufi. That's a Sufi. What is it? The one who has istiqamah and the one who treats people well. That's a test for next week. What's a Sufi? The one who has istiqamah and the one who treats others well. So, what does it mean to be a Sufi? Now, the reason why this is important as well, that we might look at these 2 traits, istiqamah and being good to people, and say, we hear this and they're just words. But it's a really profound statement. Why? Because you can only really have istiqamah, or look at it a different way. Having istiqamah and being good with people, it's a consequence of something else. Someone of istiqamah, or someone having istiqamah, someone who is consistent and unwavering in what they are, in their practice, and someone being good with other people, that's the consequence of a heart that's connected to Allah. That's a consequence of a heart that's conscious of Allah, that's aware of Allah. Because how can you have istiqamah otherwise? Can you have istiqamah while you're watching Netflix? Can you have consciousness of Allah when you're watching Super Sunday? You can't, can you? Right? That's my point, that these are profound statements because they are speaking to us at the level of foundations. And the foundations are that the one who has consciousness of Allah, the one who is aware of Allah, the one who's thinking about Allah, they will, as a consequence, have these other qualities. Because look, if we're not always, I'll give an example. One of the ways to treat people well is to think about people. So let's say you're driving your car, you're at work, whatever you, in your moments that you're by yourself, they are the moments that you need to be working on people. You don't work on people when you get with people. You work on people when you're not with them. Because when you're not with people, you need to be figuring out, okay, how do I understand a person who may behave like this? How do I understand a person who may act like this? How do I know interact with a person who may say this? These are all things that have to happen away from people. Because when you're faced with that in any given context, when you have that situation, what's going to happen? You're not going to know how to deal with it. There is no treating people well at that point because we've not disciplined ourselves to know how to deal with it properly. But if we go away and we think, that person says something to me, and yeah, maybe I didn't like it. It was something which may have been a bit rude or curt or strong. But let me just think for a moment why that person may have said that to me. Did I do something? Have they had a bad day? Are they having some problems maybe? Is their background a little bit challenging? So we're not excusing necessarily what they've done, but we're certainly understanding why people behave a certain way. And when you constantly direct your mind towards that direction, very quickly or hopefully we should come to recognize that, maybe it's not as bad as what I think it is. People aren't out to get me. People aren't out there. The world doesn't exist to say bad things about me. The world doesn't exist to behave inappropriately with me. It's not about that. Sometimes it is circumstances, you happen to be on the end of it. Right? So this is what the Imam is saying, that to treat people well, how can you treat people well? You need to think about people when you're not with people. How can you think about people when you're not with people? If you think about Allah. And how can you think about Allah? By reducing the distractions of the dunya. If we are distracted by the dunya, we are not thinking about Allah. It's simple as that. It's commensurate. So we've got a barometer now, we can test ourselves. That why am I bothered by people? I'm bothered because I haven't figured out how to behave with people, I haven't figured out how to compartmentalize in my mind the way people act and the things that they say. I've not worked out how to be magnanimous, charitable. But then you can work your way back and then realize, it's true, because I'm actually spending 8 hours of my day doing nonsense. Right? Then we can see the correlation directly, isn't it? So that's what I mean, that I know this might sound simplistic, but what is the difference between you and a wali? The wali is the one who's put the hard yards in. The wali is the one who's not watching the Netflix or the Super Sundays or getting caught up in nonsense. The wali is the one who has directed their heart to Allah. And as a consequence, they are always thinking about creation in the best way possible. Whatever they face, they'll try to put a good understanding to it. And the difference then arises that because we're not that way inclined, because we're not putting in the hard yards, it manifests itself in a complete opposite way. Someone says something, why did they say that? Someone does something, why did they do that? Right? Someone looked a certain way, someone sat a certain way, someone didn't sit a certain way. Everything now carries a meaning. Right? Because why? We're wanting to feed because that's the nature of the nafs. The nafs wants to feel offended so it can give vent to its anger. It can give vent to its feelings. It can give vent to the fact that we want to be seen to be right. But these are all things that we have to really work hard on to remove from our lives. So that's what the Imam is saying Sufism is. It's not as simple now, is it? And then he says, the next thing the Imam says, and I'll just finish this part here from the passage. الاستقامة مع الله تعالى والسكون عن الخلق فمن استقام مع الله عز وجل وأحسن خلقه مع الناس وعاملهم بالحلم فهو صوفي. And now hilm I've spoken about before, because in the translation it says the one who deals with people mildly. But hilm in Arabic, what does it mean? It means it's a type of patience. But what type of patience? It's the next level of patience. It's that type of patience where the more someone does to you, i.e. wrong, the more merciful you are to them. Can we even fathom that? Just process that for a second. You know these questions that come up then, but how about if someone's behaving like this? How about if I find this? This is telling us That, well, there's a way to behave to that, which is just be, we have this saying, kill them with kindness. But genuinely, not as a tactic. Right? So it's telling us that treat people with hilm, and it's amazing because the Prophet ﷺ, one of his, this is one of his names, is Halim. If you look at the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, how many instances do we have where the Prophet ﷺ, people are doing bad to him and he's doing good to them? In fact, that is the whole seerah. The whole seerah is about that. People are doing bad to the Prophet ﷺ. People are doing bad to the Prophet ﷺ, and he's doing good to them. That's prophecy, right? So that's what hilm means. And who was the wet nurse of the Prophet ﷺ? Halima. That's amazing, isn't it? That the act of giving the Prophet ﷺ, nursing him, is being conducted by a woman whose name is Hilm. It's, if someone should actually do a study of this, that if you look at the names of all the people who are around the Prophet ﷺ from the moment that he was born, the moment he came into the world, it's incredible that you have these names which are so meaningful, like Shafa'a, the midwife. Right, Shafa'a, it's interesting that the Prophet ﷺ comes into the world at the hands of a lady called Shafa'a, which is the same root word for what the Prophet ﷺ is at the end of time, which is a Shafi', the intercessor. It's amazing, isn't it? Ayman is his, he's my mother after my mother. She's the only person, by the way, this woman is the only human being that was with the Prophet ﷺ from the moment he was born until the moment that he left this world. Ayman. Yeah, Barakah. Naam. So that's what the Imam is saying here about who a Sufi is. وَالْإِسْتِقَامَةُ أَنْ يَفْدِيَ حَظَّ نَفْسِهِ عَلَى أَمْرِ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى وحسن الخلق مع الناس ألا تحمل الناس على مراد نفسك بل تحمل نفسك على مرادهم ما لم يخالف الشرع. Now just this last bit here in this section here, that istiqamah is to sacrifice the ego's pleasure to Allah's command. But look at this one now. An excellence of character with people is not to get people to do what your ego wants, but to get your ego to do what they want. I'll repeat that. Excellence of character is not to get people to do what your ego wants, but to get your ego to do what they want, as long as what they want is not against the Sharia. That's good character. So if now we want to know what good character is, that's good character. It's not what I want, so I should do what they want. Can you the frames that we build up, this is it. Then the Imam says, ثم إنك سألتني عن العبودية وهي ثلاثة أشياء أحدها محافظة أمر الشرع وثانيها الرضا بالقضاء والقدر وقسمة الله تعالى وثالثها ترك رضا نفسك في طلب رضا الله تعالى. He said, the next thing that you've questioned me, the Imam is saying, you've asked me about ubudiyah, which is the act of being a slave, the idea of being a slave to Allah. And the Imam is saying it's three things essentially: Sharia, Qadr, and overcoming your ego. That's it. That's what it means to be in this slave relationship with Allah. It's to observe the Sharia, because that's what Allah wants from us. Number two, it's to observe the Sharia because that's what Allah wants from us. Number two, it's to be content with Allah's decree, whatever Allah's ordained for us. And number three is to reject the nafs in favor of seeking Allah's pleasure. That's ubudiyah. And then the Imam says, you've asked me about tawakkul. Naam. This is another way of looking at it. We've looked at tawakkul in different ways. We've said before that tawakkul is you do what you have to do, and once you've done what you have to do, then you rely on Allah. That's the second part, is tawakkul. So it has two components. This is another way of looking at tawakkul the Imam's going to give us here. وَسَأَلْتَنِي عَنِ التَّوَكُّلِ وَهُوَ أَنْ يَسْتَحْكِمَ اعْتِقَادُكَ بِاللَّهِ تَعَالَى فِي مَا وَعَدْ. That you question me about reliance on Allah. Isn't it interesting that the manner of these last few paragraphs is now the student comporting to the Shaykh and asking him the questions that he thinks are relevant for his journey. And the Shaykh, in his capacity as a murabbi, as a murkish, Imam Ghazālī is that, isn't he? That he's answering him in such beautifully simple ways. He's not over elaborating, he's just giving to the student what he needs. So he's saying that what's tawakkul then? He's saying it's that your creed, i.e. your belief about Allah in relation to what He has promised you, and that you come to hold this sincerely, not something that you're in doubt about. And he goes on, he says, and I mean you should believe that what has been predestined for you will inevitably reach you, even if all that is in the world try to divert it from you. In other words, this is a hadith as well, that if all of mankind and all of jinn got together to bring about any good or any harm, and if Allah didn't want it, no one can do anything. And it's to have absolute belief in that. ما يصيبنا إلا ما قد كتب الله لنا. Nothing will ever happen except which Allah has decreed for us. No. What He allows to happen. And so he's saying that this is tawakkul. It's to know that everything that happens, it happens by the will of Allah. And what is not written will not come to you, even if the whole world helped you. يعني تعتقد أن ما قدر لك سيصل إليك لا محالة وإن اجتهد كل من في العالم على صرفه عنك وما لم يكتب لن يصل إليك وإن ساعدك جميع العالم. That's the Arabic of what we've just read. And finally, we'll take this as the last paragraph here. The last question that this disciple asks was سألتني عن الإخلاص. Now you're asking me about sincerity. Now the Imam's going to tell him. But we can sum it up. Be indifferent to people's praise or blame. So look, if you look that there's a common thread amongst all of them. If you look at what the Imam just said, a paragraph prior to that, what's a Sufi? A Sufi is just being what people want. You should be pleasing them. That's being a Sufi. And now look, what's sincerity? It's being indifferent to what they say. It's the same thing. It ultimately terminates in the same thing, which is, don't worry about anything that has to do with khalq. Your focus is Allah. And if your focus is Allah, you will truly be indifferent to people's blame and people's praise. Whether people praised us, said nice things about us, it genuinely shouldn't be something that we have any regard for. And equally then if they have anything to say about us which is blameworthy. That's the khulasa of what the Imam's saying here in terms of sincerity. He's saying, وَهُوَ أَن تَكُونَ أَعْمَالُكَ كُلُّهَا لِلَّهِ تَعَالَى وَلَا يَرْتَحْ قَلْبُكَ بِمَحَامِدِ النَّاسِ وَلَا تُبَالِي بِمَذَمَّتِهِمْ. It is that all your deeds be for Allah, the Exalted, and that your heart be not gladdened by men's praises, nor that you care about their blame. Know that insincerity is produced. Why does insincerity come about? By overestimating mankind. Insincerity is because I think you can do something for me, good or bad. And because I estimate you more than you're worth, insincerity can come in now because you'll behave in a certain way because you think that person can do something for you. This is what the Imam is saying, is that don't overestimate people. And what's the cure? Look, this is in the good spirit of a great teacher. The cure is for you to see them as subject to Allah's qudra. Everyone is taht al-qudra. And for you to reckon them as though inanimate objects. In other words, are you seeing any difference between this bottle and a person? No. Would you ever try to impress this bottle? Because this bottle might be able to do anything for you. Because that's the same thing. You go, why are you looking at humans any different from inanimate objects? Both of them are under the power of Allah. Both of them can't do anything unless Allah wants it. So look at people in the same way. Look at them as inanimate objects, he's saying. Powerless to bestow ease or hardship. So you become free of insincerity towards them. As long as you reckon them as having control and free will, insincerity will not keep you away from them. It's beautiful, isn't it? These are lessons that, really each class should be in one of these paragraphs. But such is the Imam's, ocean-like wisdom that we can only spend unfortunately not near enough time on it. So inshallah we'll stop here.